Good morning, Dana. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Let's start. Lots happening. Adrienne Adams' stated meeting alluded to a potential run, and cited that the city needed direction and leadership. And I'm pretty sure you've read it, you've wrote it multiple times that she's exploring a mayoral run and she's being
Right.
pushed potentially by the attorney general. Who does that help and who does that hurt out of the candidates and the potential candidate? One being former Governor Cuomo.
Yeah, I mean, who does it help? I think it would help Adrienne, I suppose, to
But
run
I mean, in
and
terms of rank choice, right?
oh, in terms of ranked choice, yeah. Well, let's talk about who it hurts. I mean, it definitely would seem to hurt Cuomo and Adams to the extent he's still running because, she has a strong base of support in Southeast Queens and she's got good relationships with labor. And she doesn't seem to have many enemies and uh, she's not particularly well vetted, but she has a reputation for integrity and all of that. So I think, the candidates probably most fearful of her entry into the ring are Cuomo and I guess Adams. Who it helps as far as rank choice is concerned, that's a very difficult question. Who do you think it helps?
I mean, arguably, it helps the folks running that are considered the left of center or the progressives or Lander, Stringer. It sort of plays to the moderate side where folks on the other side of the political spectrum now sort of cancel each other out, right?
Hmm.
So, but we'll see. That's why this is
Yeah,
so
we'll
fun.
see. It's all so fluid and honestly, these elections are always impossible to predict, although everyone makes predictions anyway. But this one seems especially impossible to predict.
Dana, what's the over under on Governor Cuomo announcing this weekend? What's if you were to place a bet
Oh God.
conceivably? Do you think it happens Sunday? Do you think it happens this weekend? No, yes.
Look, I think it happens next week, which includes Sunday. That's what I'll say. I mean, it seems certain that he's having an event on Sunday or this weekend. Whether that event will be an announcement or a prelude to announcement, I don't know. But he does seem like he's in, right? We reported this week that a super PAC his allies launched a super PAC to support his campaign, and my understanding is that's a move that they were not going to make public until they had a really good level of certainty that he was getting in.
Dana, you wrote an article, and I read it this very morning on the additional charges that would have come potentially Mayor Adams' way,
Right,
that probably will not see the light of day. And for right, Judge Dale Ho makes the ultimate decision, but it looks likely like he moves on. But
right,
the argument has been made by some that his numbers weren't very good prior to the indictment.
right.
What does something like this mean again in this race? Because I saw the website is up. He's running, and this is just a sort of longer term analysis on your end because you cover the city, you cover politics. What do you think this all means? Was it a sinking ship prior to all these allegations and charges, or was this like the final blow, meaning the criminal stuff and the charges?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in the predictions business, but
But
it's
just your
definitely the case that
analysis
he
of,
was,
of pre
yeah.
indictment and now post, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was already underwater in the polls, right? In late fall. I mean, the indictment was in September, right? And a bunch of at least one poll came out in October, one reputable poll that showed, a majority of voters wanted him to resign. So he was already languishing. There was this, and then his team requested a pardon from the Trump administration, which I think was thought of as like the cleanest available option, right? Because the charges would then just go away really neatly. And this move by DOJ to get Manhattan prosecutors to ask Judge Ho to dismiss the indictment. It was kind of like second best option for them, but I think it's proven a lot messier than perhaps they anticipated. In part because of the like truly explosive exchange of letters between the now former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, Danielle Sassoon, and Emil Bove, the acting number two at DOJ, where, Sassoon, as the article you mentioned points out, alluded to new charges that the office had been planning to file against Adams for obstruction of justice. And, she also laid out very clearly her understanding of what seemed to her to be a quid pro quo between Adams and the Trump administration, in which Adams would help with Trump's deportation agenda, and the charges would be dismissed. So the fact that like this still hasn't been resolved despite Bovey's demands, and the fact that there's going to be potentially a hearing on March 14th where Judge Ho hears arguments on this, and the fact that he's appointed a sort of an independent attorney to sort of lay out the arguments for and against for the matter. I mean, it's all just dragging out in a way that it can't be pleasing to Adams and his camp, and it's just creating more damaging headlines.
Dana, what do you make of the move by Governor Cuomo and Lieutenant Governor Delgado stripping him of offices, of staff, of budget lines? And the reason I mention it is I've heard multiple times from different people when I have these conversations about people somehow feeling and or thinking of the perception that it's okay to slight the governor vis-a-vis Congressman Torres, who's a member of
Right.
her own party. So this is a very forceful public move. What do you make of the move?
It seems to me like Hochul's been trying to project strength more, muscularity, whatever. I mean, you saw it also in her posture towards Trump over congestion pricing, right? Um, when he moved to, when he said, he was just gonna cancel it. And she sort of, and when he then declared him, long live the king, or however he put it on social media, and she responded quite forcefully. So it almost seems as though she's aware of the critique of her made by people like Richie Torres, that she is weak and is trying to sort of create a different impression, and also ward off potential challengers, including Richie and Delgado, and who knows who else from within her own party, not to mention the Republicans who are lining up to run against her.
Dana, what do you make of now the one of the attack claims on the potential candidacy of Governor Cuomo is, and the Times wrote an interesting piece on that made it seem, based on my lens as the reader, that former Governor Cuomo has not demonstrated doesn't really want to take, or tradition has not taken the attack posture on uh, President Trump. Now, this early on, he's not even declared.
Right.
That could change quickly, right? Uh,
Yeah, but that's been Zelnor Myri's. I think he even put up a website, right? That
hmm hmm
has the word "quiet Cuomo" in it, or something like that. So that's really been his critique. We'll see what happens, right? I mean, one benefit for Cuomo of announcing so late, if it is so late, is that he hasn't had to you know, uh, answer questions on policies, answer questions on Trump. He hasn't had to withstood what will doubtless be a relitigation of the sort of scandal that took down his governorship in the first place, or the various issues that arose during his tenure. So yeah, I mean, I think things are going to change a lot once he announces, and I don't, I can't really say whether he will suddenly, be outspoken on Trump, or what posture he's going to take. But this current posture where he's gotten to avoid saying much of anything about anything will obviously, dissipate once he announces.
Dana, what do you make of the rest of the candidates? Has anyone? What are your thoughts? Has anyone impressed you? Just as someone who's watching it all and hearing it all and getting constant polls, I'm assuming, and information and spin from the different camps. I'm reading like there's a sort of back and forth between Lander and Stringer on who
Right.
really owns the West Side, and um, there are different scrums within the sort of running, right? Some have chosen, like Zellner Myrie, to attack former Governor Cuomo, thinking
Yeah.
that's the lane. What are your thoughts on the other candidates?
I just think it's also, I mean, I know it doesn't feel early. We're at the end of last day of February and June is right around the corner and all that, but I just think we don't know enough yet, right? I mean, you've got the candidates going to these forums where they're not really debating each other, right? They're just sort of answering questions that are posed to them by the moderators. So the field is just still so formative. The Politico had a great story today that Ed Schuyler might be getting in. He was a deputy mayor under Bloomberg and now works at City and recently changed his registration from Republican to Independent. So I don't know. It's just early. I mean, the other thing that will be interesting to see is whether these candidates, form alliances to avail themselves of the benefits of ranked choice voting and in an effort to crowd out other candidates that they're ideologically opposed to.
Dana, what are your highlights for this week? Give me a recap. And now it's end of week, right? It's Friday morning. Give me
Oh
a
man,
recap. The mayor
you're
didn't
really
avail.
testing my memory.
The mayor didn't
Uh-huh.
avail, right? Which was a noted, a big deal because he hadn't in a few weeks. So
Right.
reporters were all over that. There's been different things happening. You all wrote an interesting piece about Jamani Williams and his sort of waiting in the wings to see what
Right.
happens as well. So what
Yeah.
what is what are your recaps, highlights, lowlights, and things that you said, wow, because this is an ever changing world news cycle.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the Jumani thing is concerned, I thought it was quite striking that he reached out to the four deputy mayors who resigned to see if they would stay on should he become mayor. And then the mayor's office's retort, which was quite sharp, was something like, Jumani Williams is not mayor, nor will he ever be, kind of thing. But he's clearly taking steps. Um, should he have to step in, and should this current mayor, not be mayor, which I think is fascinating. I also, am very curious, and I don't think Adams had any answers to this on Monday, but who is he going to name to replace those deputy mayors, and what role will Hochul have as she seeks to exert more control over the city in those picks? And also, what role will the Trump administration have? So, that's sort of occupying my brain a little bit.
Dana, what do you think of this theory? Why would Mayor Adams step down when you think about what's been written about it, his sort of working relationship with the Trump administration? Wouldn't he not have any value if he's not mayor? What do you think to that notion?
Right, right.
That he
That's an
has to
argument people make,
that
and
he
it
has to no
seems
matter what, potentially, right? If there's been things
right.
written and said, one side says that's not true, the other side says yes it is.
Yeah, I mean that is for those who believe the mayor has, engaged in a quid pro quo and exchanged, city policy control for a dismissal of his indictment. It would seem that his value to the president is premised on his continuing to serve as mayor. There's also the question of the mayor's psychology, right? Like, what does he want to do? Does he want to stay in office? Does he want to run again and potentially lose, and not win a second term and see one of his rivals take over? I mean, I do think the situation we're in is just like one of the most unpredictable, perhaps the most unpredictable situations I've ever witnessed in city politics. I don't know about you. Does this feel unusual to you?
It's just, yeah, it's all, I mean, just not separate of the mayor. It's just a wild time. I've never
Yes.
experienced anything like this in my entire life.
Yeah.
But I was too
So
young
I
for
just
city.
find
I
it
was too young for
possible it came
City for
out.
Sale though. The Koch years, you know,
Me
based on what I
too.
read, I was too young to really get a grasp of. But I remember Donald Maness committing suicide,
Oh my
despite
God.
being
On
so
his
young.
second try, you know?
It was really it was a lot of there was a lot of madness, and I wasn't even in the
Yes.
mix. I was, but I remember the news cycle.
Right.
Um, but what I would say is, what would you say, Dan? And I'll let you. I'll wrap with this. What would you say if, let's say, conceivably, and I asked someone this same question because now, you know, we talk about the Koch years and how that was the end
Mhm.
of his term, right? We can make
Yeah.
an argument for Crown Heights
Yeah.
and the Staten Island secession vote for Mayor Dinkins. We can make an argument for the snowstorm and Mayor Bloomberg being in Bermuda, I believe.
Yeah.
You know, people
Or coming
never
back.
forget,
Yeah.
you know, Mayor de Blasio early on with the snowstorm on the Upper East Side and
Mm.
how he managed that. There are moments, right, that somewhat somehow stay stuck in people's minds on mayors, right? What do you think ultimately, if there's a lot of time on the clock, he's still the incumbent? Mayor Adams, what do you think would be, based on so far what you've written, what you've read, would be the worst or one of the things that you say, wow, that was not a good move or that was not a smart play on Mayor Adams' part and could be the fait accompli?
Well, I do wonder,
All right,
you know,
someone. All right, let me give you the
yeah.
last person I talked to thought that Tucker Carlson was the death knell if he is a one termer.
I
Doing
mean,
that,
I
he said, was
that
like that. There's
person
no
that
turning
person
back.
that person might also point to the interview that Adams did with Tom Homan on Fox and Friends, where Homan said he would be up the mayor's butt if the mayor didn't, you know, follow through on the help he'd promised on deportation stuff. I I I wonder sometimes whether uh, Eric regrets not following through with the trial rather than going to these lengths to get his charges dismissed by the Trump administration, because it's created months now of headlines about his relationship with Trump in a city that, you know, doesn't like Trump by and large. So I do wonder about that and whether it would have been better for him politically um, to just go to trial and defend himself on charges that he believes are, you know, incredibly weak, right? And whether that might not have garnered him sympathy from voters and his base. I mean, who knows? Um, who knows what that one moment is? But certainly, this whole episode from the seizure of his phones by the feds, you know, more than a year ago, to his to his coming home from DC after his fundraisers home was raided, to, you know, to the indictment, to seeking a pardon, to, you know, potentially having his charges dismissed by the Trump administration. I mean, it's a storyline that won't go away and that voters seem deeply aware of.
What do you think? Now, last question, I promise. Trump, do you think it's only a matter of time, or do you think it's at the point now where he's overextended? Congestion pricing, firing federal employees, you know, housing, public assistance. I mean, this could prove to be catastrophic for his party in the midterms. Do you think it's at the point now where it's like, wow? Or do you think he's like, hey, I'm an 80-year-old man or close to it. I'm just going to, I said I would do these things and I'm just going to keep going, you know, whatever it is, be damned.
You know, he doubled down this week on that email that Musk sent to city to sorry city to sorry to federal workers, you know, demanding they do X, Y, and Z. It seems like he's pretty committed to this path. And it's interesting because, you know, economists are warning that the whole thing could cause a national recession, which would obviously be bad for Republicans in the midterms. Um, so you know, I mean, I haven't seen any indication that he's wavering on this current path that he's on. But I also don't, I don't cover him or the federal government, so I'm speaking as someone who just reads the
No, I get it.
newspaper.
I get it. But obviously how the leadership in the city responds vis-a-vis mayor, governor, right? Sort
Yeah,
of plays into it, right? Whether
totally.
Governor
Yeah,
Hochul did the smart thing, making a play at trying to get congestion pricing rolled back because it's proven to be a helpful tool, despite a lot of the pushback early on, right? And a lot of city police commissioner,
yeah,
DSS commissioner saying these are things that are not good for New Yorkers. Period. So they've taken
yeah.
posture. So, but then I'm gonna let you go. Anything you want to add to the conversation that I forgot to ask you and don't mention?
No, not really, but I really appreciate your having me on.
No, thank you. And this hopefully won't be the last time because there's a lot of time. There's a lot of time on the clock, Data.
There's a lot of time on the clock, we
All right.
hope. Yes.
Thank you so much and have a great weekend. Talk to you
Yeah, you too.
later. All
All
right.
right, bye.